What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to more Black Desert. So today we have a very interesting topic, and what brought it up was the other day I was talking to my friends, and some of them said they wanted to start Black Desert, and I play with them in other MMOs such as like ESO, Final Fantasy, and those are two other active ones that I play along with BDO. And so they wanted to try out Black Desert, and what I wanted to talk about was how the difficulty curve and how BDO plays out differently versus like your traditional MMOs. So before we start, I want to say check up above in the video. There's two codes for NA and EU, and you get some goodies. I think it's just dice and some cosmetic helmet. But anyway, for all of you who are just listening to this as like a on your way to work or something, whatever, this is a perfect video for that. On screen there's probably just like a clip of me killing the event Isabella boss that started the other day. But anyway, so yeah, I have some notes on what we're going to be talking about. So before we get into the game, we're going to be talking about like a sandbox game, which is BDO, and a traditional MMO like Elder Scrolls Online. I'll use that as an example, and how they play differently, because I think I am experienced enough in both games to give you like a general idea of what's different. So as you guys know, in traditional MMOs, it's like, okay, so you get to the max level, you do dungeons and raids, you get your gear from the drops, go with a group, find a guild, do all that stuff. And then once you're at endgame, quote unquote, you basically just do trials, dungeons, and all that stuff for the best in slot gear. And then you that's it. So what separates that from BDO is mostly the slow progression in BDO that you make. And I think it's a good thing. I started with other MMOs where it's just like, okay, max level, do dungeons, raids, get gear, and then I'm bored until the next set of content comes out. But BDO is also a good one that you could play solo, because a lot of the stuff in this game is solo. Don't get me wrong, it's not like it's empty. You can talk to your guildies and do stuff, and it's not this like, yeah, it's not completely empty, but a lot of the stuff in BDO you do solo. And so the way it works is basically, in BDO, there's a lot of grind spots, I say. And I know that might turn people off of the game when you say grinding. It's just like, oh, you think of running around in circles, killing mobs over and over to level up. And for me, honestly, I was used to it by playing games like RuneScape and MapleStory back in the day, before all like the other traditional ones that we have now are. And so doing circles and grinding was not like a big deal to me, because I've always liked the idea of being able to say that my gear is like better than someone else's gear. Whereas in games like ESO, Final Fantasy, World of Warcraft, the traditional ones in the way, everyone has more or less the same gear at the same time. And yeah, in this one, everyone plays at the same pace, or like no one, or I think I said that backwards. No one plays at the same pace, and that means some people will be more geared than you, and then you may be geared more than some other people. That's the fun part of the game. And ever since I started, I remember when I started with my friends in BDO, we would have a competition who could get the better gear like first, faster, and quickly we learned that, oh, all it takes is someone get lucky one time hitting an enhance, and then suddenly you're like months ahead of them. So yeah, that's a little bit different in BDO. And so in the sandbox game, it's slow progression, but it feels more rewarding to get the thing you want. And so like if you're grinding hours for rare items and whatnot, it's more like you feel a sense of accomplishment versus like, oh, I got through a raid today. Did we get the gear that we wanted? No? All right, we're doing it again tomorrow. And so I think all of us who played BDO can like comment about this as well, or just any other game. Like when you get that accessory drop from grinding an hour, you actually feel good about it. Whereas, obviously, if you don't, it feels kind of bad. The BDO is one of those games where the highs are really exciting and the lows are just like, dang, and now I have to do this again. But I guess that's what the excitement is. And yeah, so on to the next topic of how like gear works in this game. So before we get into things like the whole like more in-depth like life skill versus grinding gear, in other MMOs, you know how every time a new expansion comes out, right? And sometimes your current gear just gets outdated. So one thing I like about BDO is how the gear is not really irrelevant when a new expansion or region comes out. Your gear is still good. Yeah, and yeah, they will come out with new and better gear, but that doesn't mean your old one is worthless. And what I'm comparing that to is how, you know how like if you start another MMO and then like you have the best in slot gear, right? Then a new raid tier comes out. Suddenly your current gear, not so good. But in BDO, like I've been wearing gear that has been mostly the same, well, more or less. Like obviously I get upgrades, but it's gearing that's a little bit different. So how do I explain Capris in gear to people? So it's like, I don't know. I think enhancing is kind of the same as like, let's say you're an ESO. Let's say you have a purple gear versus a yellow. MMOs go to traditional route of like green tier, which is like the lowest tier, blue, purple, gold, as in quality upgrades, right? So BDO doesn't have that. They have a system where they go from like +1 to 15 and then pry to pen. We're not even going to talk about the enhancing system. That's just, I can go on a rant for hours. But they have that. And then after, let's say you are pen, which is the highest tier, you can go even further by adding like material to it. And then it makes your gear like slowly upgrade with higher stats on it. So that's the progression in this game versus, oh, best in slot gear just dropped. Is it for our class? Cool. If not, we run it again. So it's a little bit different. I like the way BDO does it just because you feel like your stuff is worth your time. And so like, do you feel that sense of excitement when you hit that pen, like from tet to pen your first time? You absolutely. And when your thing drops from another MMO, you get excited for like a day and then you're just like, oh, okay, don't care. So yeah, that's how basically gearing works. And let's see, another thing I wanted to talk about was in other MMOs they have this as well, like life skills is what they call it in BDO. In other ones it's like, what do they call it? It's like crafting, more or less. So as you guys know, this is a sandbox game and there's just a lot of stuff to do. So if you think, when someone tells you it's like, oh, this game is very grindy, and you think, oh, okay, just running in circles. Yeah, there is that, but there's actually a lot of stuff to do. It's like, hold on, let me change I'm processing something for everyone who's just listening, so I'm just resetting that. So there are a bunch of life skills like gathering, fishing, hunting, cooking, alchemy, processing, etc. Pretty traditional stuff. But the difference in that is you actually get rewarded for doing that kind of stuff. And unlike other games, it's just like, yeah, cool, I did it. Sell it. Like sell raw materials to the market, craft potions, whatnot. While you do that too, you actually feel that sense of like accomplishment and the value of things as well. So yeah, there's that. And then grinding, of course, to go do circles. And to me personally, unfortunately, as I get older, my time it gets more limited and I can't grind like 12 hours a day anymore like I used to many years ago in the older MMOs doing circles. But I think BDO does a really good job of, even if you grind like 1 or 2 hours a day and that's your playtime, I think you'll still feel satisfied with it. So that leads me into the next thing of, is there anything worth doing in BDO versus like other ones? So what we have as accomplishments are obviously people who go for titles, rare items such as like infinite potions, the archaeologist map, rich merchant ring, and the compass. So those are the like highlights of things people spend literally hours and, you know, years going for. Whereas other games have like mount collections, like horses, dragons, and whatnot. So I personally think it's a little bit different because a lot of the stuff in other MMOs are just more, how do I call it, cosmetic, which, you know, I'm okay with that. Like, cosmetics are always nice. Something to show off that you earned this. That is something that MMOs have to be very careful about, not making it like mandatory. And so when infinite potions came out on BDO, so if you've never played it, it's like you know how we use potions in MMOs. This one is basically like you can use it infinitely, clearly, and you just never have to buy one again. So obviously that is a like very sought after item. And before, it would be like a very rare RNG drop, and it would be pretty mandatory back in the day because it's just like, it's important. You can go on forever without buying potions again. And nowadays they made it easier. Like, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, which is something I've always wanted in video games. So as you guys know, I do agree that there should be like relic and rare items that you have to go for. And like, I would rather spend 1,000, maybe 2,000 hours on an item if I knew that at the end of that, there's a guarantee of it. Whereas in BDO, like, there is a mix of things you can and can't do. So some of it is light at the end of the tunnel, whereas you put enough time into it, you can potentially get it versus you will get it. That's the difference. So I think over the years, I think BDO has made the game, I would say, quote unquote, casual. Like, and I don't mean it's like, oh, okay, we're done in 2 weeks. No, it's still going to take you a long time. But I think they're making a lot of quality of life improvements that are really nice to the game that, yeah, encourages new players. And that's always been a hot topic, especially in the BDO community. And there's been a lot of stuff in the game where it's like, oh, okay, so you're adding this item into the game, and now newer players can get it, but I spent like 5,000 hours on it, whatever. That's just a number, by the way. And, you know, I see both sides of that, and I'm just like, yeah, I get it. You spent a lot of time, you're happy with and proud of your item. So, but at the same time, like, you shouldn't have to make a newer player spend that much time when the game obviously gets older over the years. And like, yeah, I fully agree that they should add some new items, which they did, like the Jatina's pen, armors, weapons, accessories, where you can light at the end of the tunnel kind of thing. So yeah, I agree. They should make the game, quote unquote, casual and make things easier to obtain. Because you know what? The worst thing that can happen is if the game is dead, so is your gear and progression. So you obviously, as a player, a veteran player, you want people to play the game. And yeah, you're still going to be better than them, most likely, by having it. But they can catch up to you slightly easier now, which I always think is a good thing. And I'm glad they do that. So yeah, I guess when people ask me, is like, is BDO dead? It's like, no, I actually see a lot of people playing the game pretty regularly. No matter what I'm doing, what time of day, I can always see a lot of people around. And that's always a good thing. That's a good sign. I'm glad that a game that I've been playing for many years is not dead. So, yeah, that's one thing. So overall, there's a lot of, oh yeah, one more topic that I wanted to talk about. And this one is, it's a little bit tricky to explain. Like, are dailies worth it in this game versus dailies in other games? So Lost Ark is a example of what I've played recently, you guys can actually watch some of my videos on the channel from a while ago, where you do dailies, but you have to do them on multiple characters, and eventually that just gets tedious and repetitive. Now, in BDO, they do dailies, of course, but like you feel like you're actually accomplishing something with it. And I know that is like perspective and how you see it. Some people enjoy doing dailies on 12 characters a day. I personally don't. I'd rather do dailies on 1 character a day. And it's one of those things where how do you make them engaging for everyone? And I've always thought that was a tricky thing to think about. And when I've actually thought about it, I'm like, okay, so if I was a developer, what would I do? And obviously, to make things like dailies worth it, you can't just give people like full best in slot gear at the end. What you could do is like, I guess they do that in BDO in a sense, but it's just you go through a million different steps to get to that point. Whereas it doesn't feel like, oh, new player, I just got everything I can in 3 weeks, I'm good to go. So the way they have progression in BDO and through dailies and whatnot is like, so let's say if you're a veteran player, you already have all the best gear, you're just going on, your progression is obviously going to be slower than a new player, but at the same time, it's still at a good rate to the point where you will still be ahead as a veteran player, whereas a new player can catch up. But then let's say you are, I don't know, like very high end, and then a new player catches up, they'll still be at like what, 50-60%, and you will have that's still a huge advantage, because the time it'll take them to catch up to you is still going to be like hundreds if not thousands of hours, maybe. That really just depends. RNG is a big factor in this game. But at the same time, those new players can feel like, oh, I've progressed and I've made some huge accomplishments. And it's like, they can still compete, but the better player will still win, more or less. We're not even going to talk about class balance in this game in this video. We'll talk about that in another video. But it's just like, from a solo player, how would you feel? And I think just like, catch-up mechanics are good, as long as the game is not dead, which is good. And no, you as a veteran player who spent thousands of hours on something, no, your progression is not worthless. You are still at an advantage, so that's good. But yeah, I think that's what kept me playing BDO all this time. So those are some examples of how I think traditional quote-unquote MMOs versus sandbox MMOs are different. And do I think BDO is hard to learn? No, but here's the thing. When you first start BDO, you're going to get confused because there's a lot of dumb settings in this game that are turned on by default. That's not a big deal, but it's just like, I wish they were off. And then a lot of things, just in general, I wish it was off by default, and then you turn it on when you think you need it, kind of thing. Instead of on, then you toggle it off because you have no idea what's happening. And so, is it hard to learn? No. Hard to master? Yes. Kind of thing. Whereas you will not make instant progression overnight compared to other games. So that's a little bit of a difference. I was just being real with everyone with this video, and hopefully you guys enjoyed it. So if you did, and you are new, hit that subscribe button. I try to upload videos pretty regularly, so if you're a new player or a veteran player, feel free to comment below. Let me know what your thoughts are about this game. And one thing I am very curious to know is, what kept you playing this game? Is it because you play solo? Do you like grinding? Do you like the whole sandbox game like style? Or do you just play with friends? Is that what's fun for you? So I'm curious, what keeps you playing? And if you played other MMOs, what made you switch? So with that said, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a fantastic day. If you're new, drop a quick like, subscribe. I have my social media down below on the video and in the description, so that we have a playlist for all the videos I've done this year. I've been playing this game since 2016, so if you have any questions on how to do something in this game, feel free to ask, drop it in the comments, and happy to answer those questions for you to the best of my ability. And so I know this game not going to be the easiest one, but that's a long outro rant. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a fantastic day.